Isaiah 52 in verse 13 through Isaiah 53. I got handed the week of our scripture reading that ends in Isaiah 53, and you can't do a Lord's Supper talk without talking about possibly the most well-known Old Testament passage. It's a passage, it's one of four. I'll address the other ones in the sermon in a few minutes. But it's a passage that talks about God's special servant, never named directly, but he is one who works for God directly. And when you read Isaiah 52, starting in verse 13, you get to see some attributes of this servant. You would see that my servant will be successful. He'll be raised up and lifted up and greatly exalted. It's a servant who will be glorified in some way. That's something to keep in mind. In verse 14 of Isaiah 52, we learn that the servant will be damaged beyond all recognition. Just as many were appalled at you, his appearance was so disfigured that he didn't look like a man, and his form didn't resemble a human being, so he will sprinkle many nations. There will be a disfigurement of this man, and yet it will end in salvation. That's something you should keep in mind. In verse 53, we learn, in chapter 53 and verse 2, we learn that he's not going to be visually significant. Verse 2, he didn't have an impressive form or majesty that we should look on him or appearance that we should desire him. There's nothing, when you look at this man, there's nothing significant about him that you'd take notice of him over anyone else. In verse 3, we even learn it would be shameful to acknowledge him. He's despised and rejected by man, a man of suffering who knew what sickness was. He was like someone people turn away from. He was despised and we didn't value him. He's one of those individuals in society where giving him attention would be an embarrassment to you. To know that you associated with one such as him, one who looked like him in his shape and form. It would be shameful to even acknowledge him. But the servant of God is someone who doesn't do the same to you. We might insult him, but in verse 4, he would give everything to you. He bore our sicknesses. He knew what sickness was. We wouldn't appreciate him, but he bore our sicknesses anyway. He carried our pains. We in turn regarded him stricken and struck down by God and afflicted. We looked down at him and made a mockery of him. We put him on the cross, and yet he gives everything for us. He became the substitute for sins. In verse 5, he was pierced because of our rebellion, crushed because of our iniquities. The punishment for our peace was on him, and we are healed by his wounds. We wouldn't do anything for him, but he would do everything for us. That's who the servant of God is. And he did it, moreover, without complaining. Verse 7, he was oppressed and afflicted, yet did not open his mouth, like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep silent before its shearers, so he did not open his mouth. No disruption or an attempt to change his fate. He was content and settled in this course. He was innocent, of course. He didn't deserve that, but he was considered guilty anyway. Verse 9, he was assigned a grave with the wicked. He was with a rich man in his death because he had done no violence and had not spoken deceitfully. The other way to say that would be he dies like a dog in the streets. But he's buried like a king. That's an odd combination. But of course, he will ultimately be satisfied. His satisfaction doesn't come on the earth, but it comes after the earth. In verse 11, after his anguish, he will see light and then be satisfied. By his knowledge, my righteous servant will justify many, and he will carry their iniquities. Therefore, I will give him the many as a portion, and he will receive the mighty as spoil, because he willingly submitted to death and was counted among the rebels, and yet he bore the sin of many and interceded for the rebels. There's a satisfaction that the servant of God achieves in that even when he loses everything and is hurt and is destroyed beyond all recognition, God recognizes his achievement and gives him the victory. The whole point of the servant's existence is to go and free people, and that's what he does. He tries it, and then he succeeds in doing so. That's the servant of God as displayed by Isaiah 52 and 53. So who is that? Right? God's special servant. Who is that? Well, we all know the answer. This is, as in the words of Peter, this is Jesus whom you crucified. Because even as chapter 52 and verse 13 begins this statement, see, my servant will be successful. He'll be raised and lifted up, and by that greatly exalted. It's not just a metaphor for him being impressive. That's not a metaphor for him being so glorious. That's a statement of the crucifixion. But by his wounds on the cross, we were healed. That's what we get to remember this morning.